Erased Destiny 2, The Knower. Chapter 8, Visiting Tyrdam. No sooner had Jargon set foot on the shores of Tyrdam than the guards lowered the bars, blocking all entrances to the city. The first thing Jargon noticed in the stone-filled city was the emptiness. Nobody was walking through the streets. Nobody was talking to friends on the waterfront. Nobody was buying hot snacks or beer. In fact, all the shops were closed, and there were no stalls or street vendors in sight. The only people strolling through the deserted streets were the guards. Instead of wooden clubs, they carried steel swords or halberds and crossbows on their backs. It was as if Tyrdam was in a state of war, or rather siege. Hungry, tired, and, above all, soaked to the bone, Jargon felt like an uninvited guest in Tyrdam, almost a criminal, a boy without a roof over his head.
Go home before you get hurt.
I'm lost.
Oh, I'll take you back.
Jargon spoke in the desertion, and guard answered the same way. He came down from the bridge, approached the lost boy, gave him some wine from his wineskin and a piece of sausage. The warm welcome was completely out of place in the seemingly dead city. The sight of the soaked desert dweller evoked a kind of melancholy in the guard. The worse things got in the city, the more frequent such friction between residents of competing neighborhoods became. Although the guard could not rule out deliberate abandonment, parents who could not keep their children in check, colleagues sacrificing one of the group to divert the attention of the patrols from their own lateness.
Which neighborhood do you live in?
Silverfield.
It was the only name he could remember from the map his father had drawn. He waited anxiously for the guard's reaction. Seconds seemed like minutes, and every beat of his heart echoed in the boy's chest.
So if I walk you to the Fountain of the Pegasus, you'll be able to find your way on your own? You're in luck. I'd like to live there myself. I think it's the prettiest neighborhood in Tyrdam. What do you think?
I guess so.
You certainly have many fountains. Which one do you like the most?
The one with the birds.
Jargon stumbled over his words. Although he had no trouble with the language, the lack of basic knowledge about the place he had ended up in was reflected in his mind by Fidelis' words: "A poorly prepared scout is a dead scout." Never begrudge the time to reconnoiter the area or study the map. They crossed the bridge and continued on their way. Jargon was still thinking about his situation. The guard did not continue the conversation. He decided that the boy was so terrified that he couldn't speak. On the surface, the other side of the city didn't differ much from the first. The same stone houses, the same even streets, the same stone pillars. Only the terrain forced a slightly more varied architecture. Some alleys disappeared in the darkness. Others were lit up by patrol torches. No one paid attention to the guard escorting the teenager, as if barely shadows were moving on the cobblestones instead of people. Further on, the houses changed from rectangular blocks to varied shapes with turrets. Then the colors turned more yellow. Stone reliefs appeared, as well as benches and small squares where people met to talk. Although there was an unusual silence in this part of Tyrdam at night, it might have been a bit more pleasant during the day. The Fountain of the Pegasus took up a larger square in the part built up with magnificent residences. Each of the houses built around it seemed to tell a different story, to belong to a different dynasty, to invite a traveler to a different world. And it was there that the guard had said goodbye to Jargon, leaving him alone in a strange place. The boy turned into one of the side streets and walked until he reached a construction site. He figured he couldn't find a better hiding place. Soaking wet and freezing cold, he couldn't sleep, so he practiced water camouflage to pass the time. Although the boy remembered the gestures and words made, he couldn't make the water cover his body with a shimmering shield.
May I help?
Jargon touched his hand, which seemed to shimmer like a precious stone.
It's the Seeker's camouflage. We manipulate liquid light, or so they say in the Crystal Palace, to classify us somehow.
So, I am invisible now, right? How to find my father? Do you know a tracking spell?
I don't know many spells. I was a seeker, not a mage, remember? But I could find your father. If you let me take control over your body.
Why are you in my head? How did it happen? Can it be reversed? Sorry, but I do not intend to let you use my body as you like it.
Due to certain unpleasant events, Ishan ended up in Marigold's body and I ended up in yours. Although you leave so much to be desired that I would rather go back as a wolf. At least I would sleep with Ishan in the same bed.
Criticized by the voice living in his own head, Jargon felt like running away to a place where nobody would demand anything from him. Whatever Jargon did, nobody liked it. Except Everett.
Well, I did have a hand in your exploits. As you rightly pointed out at 15-9, you have never learned magic.
If you're so smart, why don't you do something instead of criticizing me? Find my father. And make sure the guards don't bother me.
None of these things would be difficult for me, if I had my body. Why can't you work with me like Marigold and Ishan?
Ishan took Marigold's life. She pursues her goals, sticks to her friends, and plans everything according to her needs. I won't let you do that.
Interested in the noises coming from the construction site, the guard used the torch to light his way. The torch's glow had alerted Jargon, who quickly hid behind a pile of stones.
Well, good luck in Tyrdam then.
Don't leave me. If I die, you will die too.
I don't mind. I hope I can find a better body. I have a statue in front of the Crystal Palace. For the hero of this world. How will they honor you? Do you think anyone but your parents will cry at your grave? I almost forgot, in Tyrdam, they throw the bodies to the wolves. Nothing will be left of you.
Frightened by the approaching shuffling of shoes and the increasingly bright light cast by the torch, Jargon held his breath. He couldn't even form his hands into a shield spell. Something in his muscles was paralyzed.
At your age, I was already a shadow, protecting the Lady of the Crystal Palace. And what have you achieved, if you don't mind me asking?
Shut up.
He jumped to his feet, ran out of his hiding place, and knocked the guard down with a large block of ice.
Shut up. Life is not a race. Or some damn competition.
He left the frozen, dazed guard at the construction site and went for a night walk around Tyrdam. Whoever he met, he turned them into an ice statue. He thought that making a commotion on the streets was the fastest way to get vampires' attention. And to meet Cyril. Being left alone, Jargon felt more and more insecure, what resulted in lack of control over his magic. He started to freeze, not only guards, but the walls of houses as well.
Let's make a deal. I care about Ishan, you care about Marigold.
Only because you're in my head.
I have no power over your feelings, so whatever you feel for Marigold is yours.
Jargon stopped talking. The confusion in his head was becoming unbearable, but among the jumble of his own and other people's thoughts, one stood out, more important than the others. He liked Marigold, not Nathan. He was the one who wanted to propose to Marigold, to spend the rest of his life with her.
Okay, fine, what do you suggest?
Let me do my thing. I'll make sure you're safe and convince Marigold that you're worth her attention.
Because you have an interest in this yourself.
Of course. Only relationships based on a balance of give and take have a chance of lasting.
Jargon, deep in the conversation with himself, didn't notice the three-man patrol. Guards knocked the boy to the ground without saying a word.
Fine. Have it your way.
Jargon's leg bent backwards, pushing away the guard leaning over him. His hand touched the pavement, covering it with a thin layer of ice. Two more movements of the body and Jargon fell on his back. He summoned an ice stick, with which he stunned all the attackers. Before the last body hit the pavement, the boy disappeared into the darkness of the street. Sitting on the roof of one of the houses, Nathan could have left his hiding place at dawn and mingled with the crowd of people on their way to work or to run errands. But he didn't want to. He preferred to observe the passers-by from above, women spreading desert-typical umbrellas, kids greeting each other warmly. The Seeker's camouflage allowed him to ignore the sky patrols and even the dragonflies with their poor sense of smell. The only thing that bothered Nathan in the huge, unfriendly city was hunger. The rumbling in his stomach made it difficult for him to calmly observe the life going on below him. That's why he decided to get some food first. Not necessarily in the most typical way for the Seekers. A large marketplace seemed to be asleep. In Sintra, shopping was accompanied by shouts, loud negotiations, and unflattering comments. And in Tyrdam, people were silent most of the time or communicated only with gestures. For a moment, Nathan thought they were using an ancient palm-based language, but he did not recognize any of the symbols. Jargon was even more surprised to see Cyril shopping at the sausage stand. The man gestured to indicate the goods he wanted, pointed at them with his fingers to show how many he wanted to buy, and the seller did the same to tell him the price. Finally, they bargained for a while, also almost without speaking. Cyril paid, and, with a partially filled basket in his hand, went to another stall. This time he chose fruit. Jargon didn't recognize any of the goods on the counter. Not the small purple balls, not the elongated aquamarine rolls, not even the yellow-orange large tubers. But Cyril put all these fruits in the basket, looked at them, and deliberated about their freshness and size. After buying bread, he finally noticed Jargon following him. Cyril approached Jargon, trying not to show his anger. He tried to keep a straight face, because every move they made was being watched by guards hidden in turrets. They shook hands, pretending it was a chance encounter. Cyril gestured to Jargon to come over, and Jargon gladly accepted the invitation, all in complete silence. Only after leaving the market did Cyril dare to start a conversation.
Why didn't you go home?
Because Dead Patch fell off the amulet. And it's a bit too far on foot.
I would pay for your accommodation, but they won't let you check in without the entry permit. I will ask Ishan to send you through the portal.
Can't I stay with you? Tyrdam seems like a nice and friendly city.
Cyril's thoughts on the nighttime events that could have led his son to such absurd conclusions were interrupted by the appearance of Topaz. The hunter jumped from the roof onto the street, to the surprise and indignation of all passers-by.
Hungry women are bad women.
Topaz took the basket from Cyril and ran to the apartment.
You mustn't leave your house after dark. You mustn't go near the walls, the castle, or any fenced-in buildings. You mustn't start fights, shout, or even talk loudly. It is not allowed to sing, drink in public places, or keep animals at home. But if you behave properly, nothing bad will happen to you here. As long as you pay your taxes, of course. The poor are treated worse here than the criminals.
Jargon looked around. Only now did he notice the lack of beggars on the streets, the lack of unwashed men collecting leftover food from market stalls, the lack of food baskets for the poor. While Sintra tried to help the people in need, Tyrdam seemed not to notice them. Worse, it removed people who disfigured the landscape from the city.